Well, our correspondent Bernard Smith joins us now from Ankara. And Bernard, I imagine that because this is the first time that people have been able to directly elect their president, there's a lot of enthusiasm for this poll.
Well, Shirley, this is a country that traditionally enjoys a high turnout in elections, local elections. Back earlier on this year, there was more than 90% of people turned out, the sort of figures that would make any Western politicians very grateful indeed. So yes, they are hoping for a high turnout here. We won't know the figures until later on today, but this is a campaign that really has been dominated by one man, the charismatic, combative but polarising figure of the incumbent Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is hoping to walk away with the presidency. I'm joined by Utku Cakirozer, who's a columnist for the Cumhuriyet newspaper, which I can say is an opposition newspaper. Utku, thanks very much for joining us, first of all.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Why have the opposition not managed to come up with a candidate that can challenge a charismatic and popular Tayyip Erdogan?
Actually, it was a strategy of theirs, I mean, especially the two main opposition parties, CHP and MHP, to find a common candidate against Mr. Erdogan, because as you mentioned, the country has been very much polarized by Mr. Erdogan, so they thought that a candidate who would be sort of an independent, over the parties, apolitical figure might be very, might become interesting for the voters, or they might prefer him more than Mr. Erdogan. And also Mr. İhsanoğlu, the main opposition candidate, comes from a religious background, which was an issue Mr. Erdogan used in the past 8 elections, I mean his religious background. So they thought that this might, I mean Mr. İhsanoğlu being a pious believer, might take this benefit or advantage from Mr. Erdogan's hand. So this was a deliberate strategy of the opposition.
It's not worked though, has it?
Well, according to the polls that's been done before the elections, there was some sort of 2-digit difference between Mr. Erdogan and Mr. İhsanoğlu, but we're not sure about the results. If Mr. Erdogan wins in the first round, I would agree with you that this means that it didn't work out.
You say, people commentate that he's a polarizing figure, but Erdogan is a prime minister who's overseen a growing economy, significant growth in Turkey's economic prospects, and also he's enfranchised this group of people, this sort of the pious religious conservative masses who felt alienated by a secular elite. He, from what we see, seems to represent them. This is a man who is a Democrat at heart, then, isn't it?
You are right. I mean, Mr. Erdogan is sort of an election machinery. I mean, he has won all the elections. He has participated throughout the local elections in Istanbul. You are right, and nearly half of the Turkish society votes for him, maybe more. I mean, today we're going to see the elections. But on the other hand, I mean, you are right that he is he sort of managed the Turkish economy good. I mean, there has been a lot of infrastructure in Turkey, it's developed, and also in terms of the Kurdish issue, he has done a lot, which were all the goods of Mr. Erdogan. But on the other hand, his term as the prime minister will be remembered as a term when millions of Turks have had massive protests against him because of their freedoms and rights being limited, as you remember last year's Gezi Park protests. And on the other hand, there are very crucial corruption allegations against his government. So it's sort of a mixed figure, but you are right. I mean, especially in the first parts of his prime ministry in 2003, 4, 5, as you remember, Turkey has experienced a lot of democratic movements in its route towards the European Union.
Utku, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Polls, as I say, closing at the top of the next hour. Recep Tayyip Erdogan will be hoping to win more than 50% of the vote. If he doesn't do that, it goes to a runoff towards the end of August. Shirley, back to you.